yearly calendar of Calcutta Club, and this debate has also grown with time. Thank you, CDC, for organizing this wonderful debate. On behalf of the Committee of Management Calcutta Club, once again, I extend my thanks to all the members of CDC, the wonderful speakers who will be fighting out today, very dear Kunalda, Shradita, Shatidi, as well as Prodita, and a belated Happy New Year to all of you. Over to Tanya.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to call Dr. Abhijit Ghosh to welcome you all on behalf of the club.
She wanted to be a WBCS officer or UPS. তারপর লাইফ মানে তারপরে অ্যাকচুয়ালি পরীক্ষাটা আমি নিজে কেন এটা রাখবো আমি আবার বলছি
Good evening to all of you. Today is not a day to speak, but to hear. I, on behalf of my committee and all the members of Calcutta Club, extend a warm welcome to you. As we have always believed that this club is the intellectual hub or epicenter of the whole, not only the town, but east and also the whole of the country. So we are very interested to hear from you, to learn from you, and to have our own views together. Let us all enjoy this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to call Mr. Pradeep Guptu to welcome you all on behalf of the CDC.
Capital Debating Circle is a very small organization, initially formed by, as my friend Sandeep Chatterjee says it, by a brain surgeon without a heart surgeon without a brain, and me, a mere journalist with neither brain nor heart. So you will bear with me if my welcome is not only short but may miss out certain points. Senility does creep in. We started debating in the 1980s on College Street. The enmity between Presidency College and Calcutta Medical College has persisted from the 1980s to the present day. But one of the ways of harnessing that enmity is to form a debating circle so that we can organize debates together. This is what leads us to these mad events. We are, as we speak, in the middle of a selection round that was 23 districts in West Bengal to find the best college level debater. We are, as we speak, standing in the shadow of school level championships held across West Bengal, across multiple centers to select the best school level debaters. And in reflection of these efforts, we have a young community of students who will be your jury. Dear debaters, students, may I request you to raise your hands so that they can see their persecutors? Thank you. So these students will be asking you the questions at the end. They are all very bright young minds from the schools and colleges of West Bengal. The purpose of this entire exercise is to promote the culture of debating and to promote excellence in public discourse in our society.
This is intergenerational privilege.
We also have to thank our sponsors, which my colleague Mr. Shankar Ramalangam will do. But more than that, we thank 8 of you who've come from overseas to debate, and a 9th member, Mayuri Mukherjee, who has recently fled Calcutta and joined NYU, who will also debate with you. The motion is before you. Being from the media, I've always wanted to debate healthcare, but my 2 other colleagues overrule me all the time. So we end up bashing the media every year. This year, I'm sure will be no exception. So with these few words, in all humility, I welcome all of you to this debate organized by the Calcutta Debating Circle in association with the Calcutta Club. And you can see we have more than 1,000 people in audience and more walking in every second. To have a full house of approximately 1,500 in a few minutes' time. Besides the Calcutta Club, the Telegraph has been our partner for many years, and we thank them too. And I welcome all of you. Back to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Mr. Guptu. May I now please call Mr. Ramalingam from the CDC to recognize our supporters and sponsors.
Good evening. Thank you, Tanya. Such a big event with more than 900 to 1,000 and more to file in cannot be done without the generosity of sponsors and the munificence of sponsors. Thank you, the Telegraph, for supporting us in media in a big way. Thank you, Calcutta Club, for joining hands with CDC and making this program annually a success. As CDC was found by doctors, so the digital health partner is Asclepia Health, and they are also one of the main sponsors. Thank you, Sureka ji from the Urbana Group. Thank you, Merlin Group. Thank you, Mukher Ochok, who makes some of the best chanachors. Thank you, Gaurav Films. Thank you, Techno India University. And today's streaming partner, this entire debate is live on YouTube. Our streaming partner is Megabala Broadband. Thank you all the vendors who did this wonderful light sound LED decorators. And finally, the Kolkata Sukriti Foundation for recording and going to live stream this debate right away. Welcome audience once again. Thank you audience.
To start off the events now, we'd like to call all the speakers on stage, starting from the proposition, represented by Saket Gokhale, a TMC Rajya Sabha member and an RTI activist. Sir, please, we welcome you. Swati ma'am and Supriya ma'am, would you please join us to felicitate our guests?
তৃণমূলের রাজ্যসভা এমপি
Welcome, sir. Mr. Paranjoy Thakurta, could I please request you to please come on stage? Mr. Thakurta is a writer, speaker, journalist, and teacher in 3 languages. And we are very honored to have him in our midst tonight.
কদিন পর আজকাল হলো
ইয়াসিন মালিক ফ্যানবয়
এই একটু হেলে থাকলে হ্যাঁ কতটা নয় সামান্য হেলে থাকলে একটু টিল্ট হলেই হবে হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে
Thank you, sir. The next speaker from the proposition is Mr. Anand Ranganathan, Professor of Molecular Medicine, author and speaker on social political issues. The next speaker is Shama Mohammed, a young politician, Congress spokesperson, and a dentist as well. Can I please request Mr. Raman to come on stage?
পরাঞ্জয়কে আনন্দ রঙ্গনাথনের পাশে বসিয়েছে পরাঞ্জয়কে আনন্দ রঙ্গনাথনের পাশে বসিয়েছে
Welcome, ma'am. Now, ending up the opposition, we start with Sai Deepak.
Yes! Loud minority.
I've left the proposition incomplete. We also have Mr. Ashutosh, a popular journalist with Aaj Tak and a former we're now on digital platforms joining the proposition.
So Ashutosh, you lost your chance to change sides. We gave you a little extra time, but you didn't use your bonus. The speakers Against the motion are now the ones who are left are Sanket Upadhyay, who was still recently with NDTV and now has opted for his own channel, Red Mike. Sanket, welcome to our midst.
ও এই ছেলেটা
May I request Ma'am Priyanka Tibrewal to kindly join us on the dais, a team which is the opposition in this debate.
এই পালকি শর্মার হাজবেন্ড এই ছেলে সংকেত উপাধ্যায় হাজবেন্ডের পর থেকে না চ্যানেল থেকে ও
It gives me the greatest pleasure to invite Mayuri Mukherjee, one of our young student debaters when we started off almost a decade ago and now a PhD scholar at the University of New York. Mayuri and Mr. Raju Raman will be presenting it with a small memento. And finally, the brain surgeon, my friend and colleague Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee, and Supriya will do the honors. Okay, no debate can happen without a chair and a timekeeper. And we have a rather robust chair for this, robust looking muscular chair for this debate in the form of Dr. Kunal Sarkar. And a slim and petite and beautiful Natasha Aziz as our timekeeper. Natasha is also a brilliant debater and a lawyer in the making. So Kunal and Natasha.
এটা কি ডেসক্রিপশন দিল এটা
So it's over to you. Speakers against and speakers for. You want to do a show of hands now? Since we
আমার
have-
লাইভ চ্যাট একজন কমেন্ট করেছে কাম সারছে
Hello. Are we audible? Thank you very much on behalf of CDC for making this evening what it is. And thank you from a city where a little less than 250 years ago, the first newspaper of Asia was printed. Thank you from a city which led the Renaissance, which spread the education in this part of the world. And this city is a very simple city with very simple questions. And this city this evening asks itself that what are our journalists and journalism up to? I don't know as per your definition as to whether we live in the 4th industrial revolution or in the 5th industrial revolution, but the fact remains, ladies and gentlemen, as the quality of technology improves, probably the veracity of information declines. And hence, this House asks itself this question this evening, that journalism today is more intent on pleasing rather than presenting. Of course, we will have a strong set of arguments for the motion, and that will be matched vowel by vowel, consonant by consonant, by an equally charged opposition. But it is very important to know, because you and I live in the age of opinion polls and exit polls. So at this juncture, let us know what the House thinks now. And we will come back to you at the end of the debate to see what has your opinion changed at the end of the debate. So in the beginning, none of them has spoken. You have come with your perception, with your opinion. So those of you who think that journalism is not about pleasing, more about presenting, those of you who at this point of time would tend to agree with the opposition, please put your hands up. Fair enough, we get an idea. There is no reason to feel disheartened. That is what debating is about. And shall we again just test the waters by saying, so those of you who at this point of time agree with the proposition, put your hands up. Well, you have a rather tough task set for you this evening, members of the opposition. So better get geared up. Let us begin. It won't be that easy, sir. It won't be that easy. Right. So, very simple format. All of you will get a chance to speak for all of 7 minutes. There was some whispering going around between some of the speakers and my colleague, the timekeeper, Natasha. I think in this day and age, everything will be above board and above water. And Natasha is gracious enough to award you another extra minute to speak. A little difference from the Indian Parliament of today, there are no expulsions this evening. So, we refrain ourselves from expelling anybody, and hence be assured we will be having numerical equipoise by the time the evening is over. Right. But there is something, Zakir, we must check the alignment of the heavenly bodies this evening, because Paranjoy and Anand are sat next to one another. Right. You agree, Paranjoy? All right. Paranjoy will never miss a trick in the book. So they will speak for all of 7 minutes, and then we have the missiles targeted at them from the back, and the students will fire a set of questions. Depending how far that has taken up, I would ask both the teams to get ready with a 2-minute summing up. So as the evening goes on, please decide who will be, it is a little bit like the Christians to the Lions. So decide who will do the 2-minute summing up, and then the House votes again. Ladies and gentlemen, like all good things, let the debate begin. And it's a great pleasure this evening to request our dear friend and a person who probably is one of the most acclaimed authors in 3 languages on various issues to do with the media, the ethics of the media. Nobody has inspected it better and in greater depth than Paranjoy. Paranjoy, the floor is yours.
One brief clarification. Do I have 7 or 8 minutes?
If you have kept us happy and pleased, then 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Is the timekeeper going to ring the bell at what stage?
7 and 1.
7 plus 1.
7 plus 1.
All right.
And then we have other physical means of jokes about, please.
Well, my time starts now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
সামান্য
Anik Dhonabad. Thank you for bringing me to the city of my birth, the city where I worked for several years, including when the Telegraph was launched. Thank you to the Calcutta debating circle and the Telegraph. Yes, I promised I would say something. I could never have imagined that I would be sitting next to one Dr. Anand Ranganathan, and I could never imagine that we're speaking on the same side. In the past, I've only met him virtually, and usually we've been trying to find choice epithets to criticize each other. So it's a pleasant surprise. Let me get straight down to the topic. Journalism today is more intent on pleasing rather than presenting. What is journalism today? Are you talking about journalism across the world? 200 countries on planet Earth? I'd rather focus on journalism in India. It's not that journalism across the world is exactly doing very well, but as a journalist who's been working for the last 46 years, including, as I told you when I started with the Telegraph, I am ashamed disappointed, deeply so, when I look at my brothers and sisters, my sons and daughters in journalism, who have forgotten what they were supposed to do. Yeah, we've heard of the media being part of the fourth estate. We've heard about Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India, which gives every citizen a fundamental right to free expression. Yes, we also have reasonable restrictions on that right, Article 19(2). But I believe the job of journalism in a democracy is to hold truth to power. To ask questions, not goody-goody questions, but difficult questions to those who are ruling us. They could be politicians, they could be corporate captains, they could be military officials, and I dare say even mafia bosses. The media in India, true for certain countries in the world, not true for all in the world, but certainly in India, why are they so determined to act as if they work for public relations companies or advertising agencies? You know, my friends in advertising, they say, you know, we are paid to advertise a product or an individual or something like that, or a service. But the role of a journalist in a democracy is to be critical of those who are in power. Ask them tough questions. And why has this particular phenomenon been so widespread across large sections of the media, especially over the last 10 years or so? Coinciding with our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, becoming the Prime Minister of India in May 2014. You will note that Shri Narendra Modi is the first and so far only Prime Minister of India who's never held an unscripted, spontaneous press conference. Never. Of course, he picks and chooses journalists he likes, journalists who ask him questions he wants to be asked. Never cross-questioning, never, almost never happens. I can name all of them for you. And of course, sometimes he gives interviews to non-journalists, including well-known actors, a former citizen of Canada, Shri Akshay Kumar. Remember, he asked him a very important question, which is right I had asked him to ask him. Modi ji, aap aam kaise khate hain? The Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy being asked, aap kaat ke khate hain ya choose ke khate hain? So when you have an atmosphere of this sort, why are you surprised? Why are you surprised that my friend RSS, Rahul Shiv Shankar, is what he is? Why are you surprised whether Arnab Goswami, who had a different avatar when he used to some years ago, is too busy criticizing the opposition and not those who are in power? I mean, to me, Arnab Goswami used to be a journalist. Remember, I'm saying everything in public. Today, I believe he's become a monstrous caricature of what a journalist should be. There are journalists who are ideologically aligned with the ruling party. Say my friend Rajat Sharma, he was always a supporter of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. He was a member of the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad from his college days. So he's ideologically on one side. But there are others whose owners have told them, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So the owners are so dependent on government advertising and advertising which is given to them by public sector organizations that they only sing one tune. So the Basuri Bajak, the piper has come, he can play Rag Yaman for you, you know, but you don't want him now, you're paying him, so you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, yehi bajaiye. So this is the degeneration of an institution, and this is very, very widespread. So instead of presenting facts, instead of analyzing those facts, you're too busy pleasing those who are in power, because you believe that's when the advertising revenue will come, and that's how you'll keep your organization going. So you don't care about democracy, you don't care about strengthening democracy. And we wouldn't be able to call ourselves a democracy if it hadn't been for the fact that you could hold accountable those who are in positions of power and authority. Now, I have seen how our profession has degenerated, and particularly the pace at which it has degenerated over the last 10 years has been mind-boggling. So I believe that it's important for all of you. Journalism is too important to be left just to journalists. Okay? I think it's important for all of you to speak in favor of a media that is not intent on pleasing, but presents facts, analyzes facts, asks questions that are important. And I feel if we haven't done this, then our democracy has become all the more weaker. Thank you very much.
If there was ever an example of hitting the nail of the head, then I think the hammer probably has met the nail head-on, right at the epicenter. Paranjoy has given us a lot of food for thought, because after 75 years of independence, when the country has something like 100,000 newspapers and periodicals, it is believed that the selling price of a newspaper or a periodical to the consumer, to the average person like you and me, is only about 1/5 of the production cost, and the rest 4/5 comes at even less, and the less depends upon graces, favors and advertisements from all over the place. And who else? We start with the youngest, Mayuri, to spring up in defense. Before Mayuri comes up, Mayuri represented the present Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in UK and Boris Johnson in presidency in Calcutta. And Mayuri, by the way, you know where you have been for the last 6 months? Fox News, #1 in the most biased media, and Fox News, #1. Mayuri, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. For us, I will let you in on a secret. I have at least 10 friends here with me, and even they did not do the service of raising their hand. So it is a tough task, but this motion, it reminds me of this very interesting and enterprising example of journalistic presentation in the recent past that I want to share. It is about former US President Donald Trump. You may know that at one point he owned the Miss Universe organization. There is a picture of him standing in the middle with the base Nigeria around the other side. Fox News. What I want to say today is that presentation itself is an art. Journalism is. I have only one battle, constantly posting anti-government as he spends 7 minutes saying he would not have anything to do to it. Pleasing, then what? Stand here and tell you there are strange bedfellows. Or are they pleasing the audience? Because if they are pleasing the government, that is, you will want the media to call him prince. To please him, you have to call him the king. And then you will demand that he be called an emperor. And then you have to please him, you have to call him a god. So that was the body. Therefore, it is not pleasing, it is more peace. Polarization, provocation, and payment. The intent of journal revenue and the more lucrative it is. So, you know, there will be multiple examples, dear audience, from side proposition. They are, at the end of the day, for pay. And the form of presentation that we see in citizenship journalism today, of citizenship journalism and its presentation, which was the eyewitness, that is our form of democratic presentation, which was once a point of time when Anand would do his theatrics so that you wouldn't change attention for enough time so that don't switch to Netflix or to your favorite Amazon web series. This is an extremely nuanced form of the attention economy that we are living in today. Media is so much more than what side proposition wants to tell you. This is not a debate about how the media is a sellout. And if you are to blindly believe that all the media does is to please, then what about the recent United Nations report condemning the 86 journalists who were killed in Gaza? Or the fact that one of the most recent holding freedom of speech, the cornerstone of democracy. They were citizen journalists who were never intent on pleasing, and even the presentation they did, be it aesthetics or be it content, and I'm sure members of my side will delve much deeper into the analytics of presentation, to tell you that media is way beyond the limited definition that side proposition will offer to you today. The discipline that I currently study is the discipline of anthropology. One of our most foundational books is actually titled The Presentation of the Self in Everyday Life. What that means is presentation is practiced. It is practiced by us all. We present ourselves in a certain way to our families, to our colleagues, and to our friends. And we do this to optimize the way they see us, the way they perceive us. So presentation is not a value neutral thing, it is not an objective thing, but it is indeed a journalistic thing, and journalism is not pleasing, probably was. Thank you so much.
Very well said, very well said. And in spite of all the attention acrobatics that seems to be going on, I don't know what the Americans believe right now, but the current undivided attention span ideas in a 24-hour period and 15 seconds is what we spend per idea. Very well said. We are not going to take any chances at all until such time the celestial bodies are favorably aligned. After Paranjoy, it's a great pleasure to request Anand, Mr. Anand Ranganathan.
নাইস। ফোনটা হাতে রেখে হাততালি দিতে অসুবিধা হবে।
May I request you to not tinkle the bell just right now? Please give me 30 seconds. Good evening, everyone. What a real pleasure it is to be here at the Calcutta Debating Circle. For a scientist, CDC meant Center for Disease Control, which somehow seems quite appropriate. But I must thank the organizers as well as this enormous crowd. I almost feel as if I've been abducted. Razia Gundo mein phas gayi. You know, I tried to about a couple of Ferragamo shoes. He said those also are out of the market. Then I said, how about my pet Rottweiler? I can give. They said no, that's out of the question as well. And finally I said, I'll give you an annual maintenance contract of the money counting machines. That also did not work. So I'm sorry to say, Kunalda is incorruptible. By the virtue of him being incorruptible means he cannot join politics. So that's good news. It has now become a trade. It has no more moral function than the manufacture of soap. It has to present a certain view of public policy which it believes to be for the good of the community, to correct and chastise without fear all those, no matter how high, who have chosen a wrong or a barren path, is not regarded by journalism in India its first or foremost duty. To accept a hero and worship him has become its principal duty. Under it, news gives place to sensation, reasoned opinion to unreasoning passion, appeal to the minds of responsible people, to appeal to the emotions of the irresponsible. Indian journalism is written by drum boys to glorify their heroes. Never Never has the interest of the country been sacrificed so senselessly for the propagation of hero worship. Now, I would want a show of hands out here. How many of you believe what I just said is true? Okay. Quite a lot of hands have gone up. Well, I must tell you that these were not my words, but rather verbatim the words of Dr. Ambedkar on Indian journalism, spoken nearly a century ago. Nothing has changed
Yes.
in 100 years.
Yes.
You believe what you see, but unfortunately what you see is written by those who see what they believe.
Oh.
Objectivity has become a metallic object that must be left behind before the journalist passes through the newspaper threshold. The biases have stopped beeping altogether. Journalists have realized, forget the risk of losing government ad revenue or patronage for their organizations. They have realized that if they have to escape prison, they must please their political masters, be there in Delhi or in Bengal. In light of what Dr. Ambedkar said a century ago, the topic of the debate needs to be tweaked a little. It is not that journalism today is more intent on pleasing rather than presenting. It is that journalism has always been
Yes.
intent on pleasing rather than presenting.
Yes.
Journalism has always been the first defense of the crooked, of the propagandists, of those carrying an agenda. Ironically, as the quality of journalism plummets, the citizens have become more aware of the devious games being played at their expense. Social media has brought about democratization of voices that are heard. The journalists and those who control them detest this. Of course they do. But there is little they can do except to pass more and more draconian laws to curb freedom of speech. I can go on and on, but I realize that my interjection would not be complete without providing examples of how journalists, either viscerally or through political pressure, have stopped asking questions of those who most need to answer for in a democracy. Examples that illustrate how journalists are more intent on pleasing than presenting the truth. I begin with Modi. Just two examples out of hundreds would suffice. The annual budget is going to be presented in a couple of weeks' time. But did you know that 21% of the 45 lakh crore odd sum will be allocated for propping up 1830 public sector units, out of which 400 are non-functional. Except Air India, there has been zero privatization. And as for disinvestment, the PSUs that are sold are bought by other PSUs. PFC, LIC, NTPC buying REC, Coal India, TDHC and NIPCO. Nationalized banks are rife with corruption. Bad loans worth 14 lakh crores have been written off in the last 10 years, out of which only 2 lakh crores have been recovered. Meanwhile, 3 lakh crores have been infused in these very nationalized banks. And as if that was not enough, 3 lakh crores have also been infused into the loss-making BSNL. Why am I quoting all these figures of loss-making government businesses? Because it was in 2013 that PM Narendra Modi said that the government has no business to be in business. He repeated it in 2017, and then in 2019, and then in 2022, almost as a ritual, every time he increased the business of the government in business. Now I ask you, in the last 10 years, has there been a single journalist who has dared to question Narendra Modi on this criminal hypocrisy? No. Let me take another example. In July last year, Modi accused the NCP and Ajit Pawar of being corrupt and perpetrating massive scams. The very next day, Ajit Pawar and other corrupt NCP leaders were inducted into the Maharashtra government by the BJP. Did any journalist dare to ask Modi why? No. Has any journalist ever asked PM Modi why did the BJP demand arrest of the congressman Anand Singh accused of 15 forest crime charges, but then made him the forest minister when he joined the BJP? Why did the BJP demand an ED raid on YS Chaudhary, accusing him of massive financial bungling and fraud of 5,700 crores, but then reneged on its demand when Chaudhary joined BJP? Who in the BJP changed the Vijay Mallya lookout notice from detained to inform, allowing him to flee? Why did the BJP demand arrest of B. Monserrat for child rape and burning down a police station, but then took back its demand when he joined the BJP? Why did the BJP demand an FIR against Kripa Shankar Singh for launching a book that claimed 2611 was an RSS conspiracy, but then went back on its demand when he joined the BJP? But if you think Modi is the only hypocrite in town and journalists are only concerned about pleasing him and no one else, you could not be more mistaken. Case in point are the next two examples. Agriculture contributes only 12% to our GDP and yet 44% of our 515 million strong labor force is involved in it. In the West, it is 2%. Production to purchase the entire chain is archaic, almost medieval. The entire sector was crying out for farm reforms, but when Modi implemented them, Rahul Gandhi and Congress poured out to the streets opposing them tooth and nail. Ironical, because the three farm laws were almost verbatim promised by the Congress in its 2019 manifesto. Verbatim, Congress promised them. But because Modi implemented them, those very farm laws suddenly became black laws. But did any journalist dare to ask Rahul Gandhi why he and his party took a shameless U-turn and held the entire country to ransom for a year? Let me give you another example. 9 years ago, the High Court convicted the BJP for violating the FCRA Act and accepting illegal donations. It was a conviction that carried prison sentences, not just a rap on the knuckles. What did the BJP do? In broad daylight, on the floor of Parliament, 30 more seconds, maybe a minute more because I need to bribe you. On the floor of the Parliament, the BJP amended the FCRA Act, going back all the way to the emergency to make the violations ineffective. The High Court was rendered toothless. Now, any opposition party would have latched on to this blatant misuse of power. It could have come onto the streets, perhaps even brought the government down. This was a godsend. But the Congress did no such thing. In fact, the Congress supported the BJP in amending the FCRA Act. You know why? Because the High Court had also convicted the Congress for violating the FCRA Act. Did any journalist ask Rahul Gandhi why this thing happened? No. They only parrot what Rahul speaks, and finally, I need to talk to Sarkar because I really need to bribe you. This is the end thrust. Please allow me just a minute.
Yeah, but since the amount is undecided, just wrap up quickly. Yeah.
Yes. Now I have dealt with the so-called Modi media and the PD media. I guess the troika would not be complete if I do not mention DD media. For years now, I'm going to make sure the Telegraph never sponsors the CDC again. When it comes to
you really need to wind up now. Yeah.
For years now, when it comes to unpleasant news regarding the state government, the media here has perfected the art of either staying silent or reporting it as news in brief on the 20th page, bottom left, font size 10. Perhaps they have learned their lesson, including the Telegraph, from the hounding and persecution of slapping the multiple cases on Avik Sarkar before he was forced to step down.
Anand, you really need to wrap up because I've got a job to go back to tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you very much. There isn't a job for me in Delhi. You'll get a chance again. Thank you.
Will you give me 30 seconds?
Yes!
Vox Populi. Vox Populi. Okay? So, as brilliant professors are slapped around and arrested for forwarding harmless cartoons and acquitted after 11 years, as journalists like Devamalya Bagchi are picked up in the middle of the night and thrown in jail, as 20,000 panchayat seats go uncontested because of murder, arson and loot, as ballot boxes are stuffed by Trinamool workers right under the gaze of the camera, as the High Court laments that FIRs were not registered in 60% of the cases of post-war violence, as blood-curdling affidavits are submitted by half-dead women, as judges recuse themselves because of threats, as 40 crores of cash is recovered from the home of TMC conduits, as President COVID is compared to COVID. The Telegraph happily consigns itself to organizing debates, asking if journalists... It seems for you only is in power, is not. Finally, for my great friend Thakurta, for my great friend, the issue now is no longer of journalists pleasing Indians. It has transcended our borders. So now journalists please foreign powers as well. So as China wrecks the world economy, kills millions through a virus that it helped deliberately spread, as China interns 1 million Muslims in concentration camps and demolishes 700 mosques, there is stunned silence.
Okay,
ক্যামেরাম্যান খুঁজে পাইনি আনন্দ রাখার যে তৃণমূলের নাম দেওয়া পত্রিকা
No, Anand, have a sip of water and relax. Yeah. Anand needs us. You see, the reason I wanted to stop you in the middle of the list is I was getting more and more anxious that what on earth would Priyanka speak about? Because half of what you had on the list, I think was Priyanka had already thought through, hadn't you? Priyanka, now before Anand says any more, please get up and get started. It's a great pleasure.
Very good evening to everyone present. And though, as I thought of it, was that journalism today is to say. I would like to say that the first speaker who spoke that, अरे मोदी के बिना आपको एक शाम की इवनिंग यहाँ हजम नहीं हो रही. मोदी कहता है देश बेच दिया, ये कहते हैं मीडिया को खरीद लिया. आप डिसाइड करिए ना, आखिर मोदी ने किया क्या है, खरीदा है या बेचा है. देखिए, they are saying, now what is the fundamental question here? They are saying that it is all about pleasing the government, and that is very much clear. But now I would also like to say that there are certain ethics in a profession, and I believe that whatever is going on, if you show that, half of the people may not like it, but that's the reality. So, as I'm forgetting the name of who said, let me just see the name. Yeah, as George Orwell said, that journalism is about printing things which others will not like, but that's the truth. So that is why whatever they are showing today on the news channels is not appreciated by everyone, but that is the reality. Like in only today's news, there was that in the Ganga Sagar Mela, a troop of sadhus who were crossing Purulia, they asked certain people कि क्या रास्ता है, उस गाड़ी को उलट दिया गया, उनको मारा गया, उनके बाल खींचे गए, कपड़े फाड़ दिए गए. All that is there in the news. Now, can you tell me that this news which is being telecasted, is it being done to please Modi? No, because that is the fact which is happening. That is why they are showing. Now, I will go through certain cases and news which all of you have seen, but just to recollect, like they are saying everything is being done to please Modi. So the CA and the NRC protest, when they were on the streets and openly all the news channels were showing everything was against the government. But did Modi ask the news channels not to show it? No, it was discussed, it was debated on all the channels. So was it done to please somebody? No, because ये सच्चाई थी और जरूरी नहीं कि हर सच्चाई हर किसी को अच्छी लगे, उसके बावजूद वो दिखाई जा रही थी. Same for the farmers' protest which was happening there on the streets. Everybody directly questioned the government. That what is the government doing? Why farmers are committing suicide? But still, it was there on all the newspapers, all the channels, YouTube, everywhere. मोदी ने अगर मीडिया को खरीद लिया था तो कैसे दिखाया जा रहा था और किसको प्लीज करने के लिए दिखाया जा रहा था, जो हकीकत थी. Although the act was repealed, even after that the media was showing everything. You may call it Godi media, but media was doing its job. The Hindenburg research report. Now some journalists who question Modi, they believe the Hindenburg report. Why? Because what is the reality? They did not wait for the Chief Justice to say anything, but in the end, what did the CGI say? They proof, but they didn't wait for that. That was also shown by the media. There were debates on that Hindenburg report. Modi didn't tell anybody that don't show this because it's concerned to Adani or for that matter any other business house. The same was there. I'll skip on this because short of time. Like I have said, that media is not only about, but when cases like this happen, where an opposition party politician, Mahua Mitra, who was accused of something and then she was disqualified and later suspended, certain interviews take place by certain journalists. Now can they tell me why such interviews are conducted? To please whom? Not just in this case. There was another case where a girlfriend of an ex-actor, Sushant Singh Rajput's ex-girlfriend, Riya Chakravarti, a special interview took place. Again, the same journalist did the interview. What was being done to change the image? So can now they tell me why and to please whom were these interviews being conducted? So as I said, exceptions are there, but you cannot just put a blanket assertions that all media is like that and every media is doing things to please. In the beginning, one of the person from the other end, he was speaking about Article 19, freedom of speech. My friend was speaking about freedom of speech. I'd like to remind you that one unlawful assembly which took place in JNU. Journalist certain journalists, they said when slogans like this were raised, कि भारत की कश्मीर की आजादी तक जंग होगी, अफजल हम शर्मिंदा हैं, तेरे कातिल जिंदा हैं, and certain journalists supported them. Now give me an answer. It was done to please whom? When the integrity and sovereignty of your country doesn't matter. एक बंदे के पीछे आप पड़े हो क्योंकि वो चाहता है कि हम आत्मनिर्भर भारत बने, क्योंकि वो चाहता है कि हर घर नल हो, क्योंकि वो चाहता है कि हर किसी के सर पर छत हो. You don't see the qualities, but आप कहते हैं खरीद लिया, बेच दिया. I'm finishing the fourth time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, you made up for Anand in some way. Well spoken, very well spoken, Priyanka. Did you drop a hint somewhere that the elections were around the corner? Right. Probably, you know, watch the pages in the next few days. I think it's sooner than what we think. It's not very often that one person gets imprisoned 3 times for the same tweet. It's not happened very many times in history, and this evening we have that same person who was locked up 3 times for saying the same thing in 3 different tweets. Hello, Saket Gokhale, the Trinamool MP and one of the most firebrand right to information activists in our country now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarkar. I want to start off by thanking CDC, Calcutta Club and Telegraph for organizing this. I'm not here to give a political speech. We have our news channels for doing that. So I'm actually going to get down to what the actual topic of this debate is. Before I start off though, I would like to remind a friend on our own side, Mr. Ranganathan, is that no, the enforcement directorate is not going to the telegraph offices tomorrow. Last 1/3 of your speech, great criticism. I would just invite you to go and give the first 1/3 of your speech in Ahmedabad tomorrow and see what happens. I've done it, I spent 6 months in jail for doing that. It's a very interesting thing about Parliament. You know, we used to have in the old Parliament building, now everything is new and vikas and big and grand, but the old Parliament building, where the Constitution of India was written, where Bharat Singh very famously threw the bombs from the gallery and pamphlets. Only 3 categories of people that were allowed to be inside Central Hall. One was members of Parliament, their spouses, ex-members of Parliament, and the third very important category was journalists with 20 years or more of experience. And that's how a lot of stories were then out. It was also called the New Parliament. In the New Parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha MPs are not allowed to sit together. So we have created this entire atmosphere to speak anywhere within the precincts of that building. We have come to a certain point when we talk about whether the media is about pleasing, raised the demand. Yes, there had been a security breach. People had come to Lok Sabha and preceded 146 MPs of the opposition the internal conflicts, because he's not to be a single parliament, there are to answer questions about what is happening, and therefore he doesn't wish to do that. You know, we often take pot shots at journalists, but a lot of times these media owners can today. Everybody can come freely express dispensation in that state. You can government, so kudos to the telegraph for that. But what is the problem with the Puris? Yeah. And no, it is not a certain person sitting in the PMO writes on a WhatsApp message, that's putting a typo in the tweet as well. So they are reporting diligently. Look at the quality of television debates. Television debates are atrocious. You're going to have a moderator who is probably leaning to a certain side, more often the side of the ruling party. Then you're going to have 1 or 2 people, unfortunate ones from the opposition, who have been sent there to participate. And then in India, we have this very interesting concept of a political analyst. So what they will do is, I'm going to invite 3 or 4 supporters of the BJP who are not yet part of the BJP, but they'll come on a news channel as political analysts. There they go on, they sit there. There's a lot of people here on the stage as well who made their careers that way, but I'm not going to get into that. But these political analysts will sit. The job is to praise the BJP, and lo and behold, a few days later, you will see that they become spokespersons of that party. So the question is, where is the role of the media? I quite agree with one point that Ms. Mukherjee from the other side made, is that media, the problem today is polarization. I completely agree. We live in a very polarized time where there is media that seeks to please the right wing. There is also a certain echo chamber of the media or journalists who want to please people on the left. So it's not that echo chambers don't exist on both sides. One is state-sponsored, one is not. That's the only difference. But there are echo chambers on both sides. But polarization, sure, media is all about polarization. But who does polarization benefit? That the question should be asked is why, what does the media stand to gain out of polarizing? I don't want to lose viewers. I have a certain set of viewers, I in fact want to get more. Why do I want to polarize the Muslim viewer? Because there is somebody on my head sitting, giving me money and coercing me into doing that. Journalism should be about good old reporting. I have been a journalist in the past, I've been a foreign correspondent, and never did I was lucky enough to not face editorial interference in the work that I did. Today, what you're being shown is either what you want to see or what the government wants you to see. What you're not being shown is what is actually happening out there. And that is the problem with journalism today. They either want to please the government, they want to please you, but nobody really wants to show you what is going on out there, and that is the problem. It is not about who the media is pleasing, but the problem is that the media today is not presenting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saket. Very well said, with a lot of thought and with a lot of moderation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a big Ridley Scott fan and had the opportunity to see the last film, Napoleon, as Napoleon in his life moved through Europe through the 78-odd Napoleonic Wars, one of the secrets of Napoleon's, and it is largely believed in the public speaking circle, that when this advocate of the Supreme Court, a very popular author, speaks, he seldom takes prisoners. It's a pleasure to welcome to Calcutta, Deepak.
Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram, and Jai Bharat.
Jai Shri Ram!
I'm grateful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to engage on the subject. As usual, it has come down to Congress versus BJP. Even on a subject which I think is of great importance to people and the quality of public discourse. But since we have anyway entered this hammam, so to speak, let's see how we are clothed in this hammam. The subject that's been presented for today is that journalism today is more interested in pleasing rather than presenting. True to my, let's say, training as a lawyer, I'll try and split my submission at least in 3 parts, taking about 2 minutes each. The first is to present my position. The second is to present facts supporting the position. And the third is leaving it to the audience on the basis of my summary to draw their own conclusions. Having appeared in certain politically incorrect matters, I'm used to taking on a hostile audience, so game on, no problem. First, I think the framing of the question or framing of the proposition itself needs to be questioned for a slightly different reason altogether. When someone says that journalism today is more interested in pleasing than presenting, I think it's very convenient and mighty rich to reduce the scope of analysis only to 2004 to rather 2014 to 2023. Because then it's almost as if there was a golden period of journalism that we have all witnessed in the past. And things have not been Before I proceed, I certainly agree with Mr. Gokhale on one point. And this is perhaps one of those rare instances where the twain shall meet, which is Telegraph certainly has the guts to get the rest of us to criticize the government because it can't do it itself. Point number 1. When we speak of revenue, when we speak of presentation of facts, And when we speak of sobriety in representation or repertoire, so to speak, you must understand where all of this comes from. I would want to use Gangotri, but sorry, I don't wish to use Gangotri, which is such a pure term in the context of the Gandhis. I call it Gangotri. The DNA of the media as it stands today is significantly forged and shaped by the crucible of the emergency. It is significantly forged by the Nehruvian legacy and the Gandhian legacy, not Mahatma Gandhi, but Indira Gandhi. Taken forward ably by her son Rajiv Gandhi and even by Sri Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, the most educated Prime Minister of this country, apparently. First, independent India certainly saw enough voices which had the guts and the temerity and the audacity to question the Nehruvian government. However, the fact of the matter remains that the Nehruvian government did not display democratic tendencies. In fact, it demonstrated anti-democratic tendencies. The very first amendment to the constitution with respect to free speech was promulgated and enacted because Mr. Nehru's government lost in the Supreme Court thanks to Ramesh Thapar and Brij Bhushan, both of whom questioned the land reform policies of Mr. Nehru. So to overcome a judgment of the Supreme Court, he introduces the First Amendment, which has significantly broader, vaguer and blanket proscriptions against free speech. Something that was, of course, supported by the chairman of the Constitution, let's say, drafting committee of the Constitution, his law minister, so to speak, the lawyer of the government, Dr. Ambedkar. Now, why is this crucial? It's not as if this particular tendency was limited to the Nehruvian government, because the fact of the matter is, apart from instances under his legacy, it was under the emergency or during the emergency, the government developed a tendency to classify media under three categories: friendly, hostile, and neutral. These were revealed, these are documented facts. Based on their reportage, 12 days before the imposition of the emergency, during the emergency, they basically slotted these newspapers as friendly, hostile, and neutral. Now, which were these newspapers? Let me actually wash this dirty linen in public for a moment. Amrit Bazar Patrika, Hindu, and Hindustan Times and Times of India were classified as government friendly based on the reportage before and during the emergency. Now, these are the voices which are apparently speaking truth to power. Now, why is this crucial? Emergency effectively led to a certain tendency where independent voices were told, fall in line or there will be repercussions in addition to loss of revenue. Now again, why is this crucial? Because revenue was a point that was raised. Most people don't know that the Press Information Bureau and the Directorate of Advertisement and Visual Publicity were constituted during the emergency to screen reportage and to ensure that people are effectively threatened on the basis of the government advertising they would get or would not get depending on how they speak. Now this is important because when someone says that the job of the reporter is to only present, I'm sorry, no, it is not the job of the reporter only to present. The job of the reporter is to contribute to information discourse by elevating the course of public discourse and contributing to shaping of opinions and to formation of opinions. There's nothing wrong with it. Which means I am perfectly comfortable with a journalist who at least wears his ideological proclivities on his sleeve as opposed to hiding behind the facade of neutrality. So what we have gone through all these years is the Indian traffic position, which is keep left, being the mainstream position as far as media is concerned, and the keep left position is presented as neutrality, so that whoever speaks against it comes out as the dictatorial right wing. You see how convenient this is and what kind of a trap you are in. Your position, which is ideologically biased, becomes a neutral position. Everybody else has to swing according to that. So the fact of the matter is, when opposition parties realize that the only way you get some column space in newspapers is by actually interfering with the media, the path to that has been paved by the government that has been in power for 40 years at the very least, thanks to the DNA that has been shaped under its regime. So it's mighty convenient to say that today it has changed. No, it hasn't.
This has always been the case, and on this I agree with Dr. Ranganathan. Second, this is one example that I have to give before I close. I just have 1 minute. I'll give 2 more examples and I'll leave it at that. Perhaps someone should open the annals of history and take a look at the role played by Sri V.C. Shukla during the regime. Officers of the information service were effectively tasked together to only present, which is to say, you will not have an opinion except for plain, cold reportage of facts. Which is to say, you will not have an independent opinion. So, I'm sorry, I don't agree that there's a competitive race between both. Let's say this is something that was started by the great Pandit of this country, Sri Nehru, the founder of India. I would want to understand the number of times the super prime minister of this country was ever interviewed by any mainstream journalist. And if they ever managed to ask her questions such as, how difficult was it for you to say no to the position of the prime minister? How do you manage to make this politics despite your gender? When you aspire for the, let's say, for the post of the prime minister of the country, you're expected to rise above your gender as much as possible. Yeah. So you actually handed the contender for the prime minister's position a victim card on a platter, and this, according to you, was fantastic mainstream neutral journalism? Please ask yourself what kind of questions you've asked of people in power in the past. 3. The number of channels in this country which are owned by political parties itself bears noting. From Sakshi TV to Sun TV to Jaya TV, it's owned across the board. So if we have such serious problems with corporate entities owning media, let's say voices, so to speak, or media platforms, why haven't these people actually started asking questions or actually filed a petition before the Supreme Court? Because every day, all sorts of petitions are filed before the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to lay down guidelines with respect to political ownership of platforms directly. Why doesn't that happen so far? So I would only submit one final thing before I take leave of the audience. You're being played by both sides. And that's precisely why serious journalism is happening today, but outside the portals of mainstream media.
Yes.
Ultimately, the quality of journalism that gets support and traction is a reflection of the taste of the society as we stand today. So if you're serious about supporting serious independent voices, go for blogs, go for specialist portals, not mainstream media. Nobody is actually doing justice to your mandate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I think it's not very often that his reference to the freedom of speech clause of the Indian Constitution gets mentioned. Because in its first avatar, when the Constitution was drafted, it was very much on the lines of the American First Amendment. And then it metamorphosed, it changed itself, and so many instances was a shadow of its original self.
Dr. Sarkar, brief introduction.
Yeah.
At least 2 speakers on both sides have spoken for 3 minutes more. I feel penalized.
We will.
I feel penalized that I stuck to my time and I did not say several things that I wanted to say. Whereas others, you were
you will be given your time. No anxiety, you know. Calcutta is a relaxed place. Priyanka, please. Is it? I never knew training was a part of debating. Right. Well, you took us back in history, you know, but not too far away from here is a street which has got famous for all the wrong reasons. It's called Harish Mukherjee Road. Few famous people live there. And that poor fellow, after him that road was named, was a young journalist who uncompromisingly fought his entire life for the cause of the indigo planters till his death. Right? People don't even realize who that road is named after. So that is, you are very near to one of the shining examples of Indian journalism, and that is the road very near to us. We are perched right on the head of the road this evening. We welcome once again amongst us a very graceful member of the Indian National Congress, one of its spokesperson, an accomplished dancer, and one of the fewest dentists whom I do not dread meeting, Shama Ma'am.
Hello, Calcutta. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Thank you all for coming, and I must say I'm very, very happy to see youngsters. That's very important for the country, and you coming here listening to us, it makes me very excited. I want to tell Dr. Sarkar that maybe you should have got E today. I think we should have got ED today. Threaten you to put him on the other side.
Very fond of a word called Sandesh. And we are rather scared of that term in the last few.
Why pleasing? The pleasing is because of the threat. And I'm going to come into it. I'm not going to talk about international, based on international, I'm going to talk about India. Why? I think the lady had spoken about Fox News, if I'm not wrong. And I'll give you an example. A press conference of Trump, a CNN journalist was thrown out. The CNN journalist went to the Supreme Court. And you know who stood by the CNN journalist or with CNN was Fox News. They are right-wing, Fox News, and CNN is exactly the opposite. That is important. The fourth pillar of democracy stood their ground in the United States of America. They did not change Trump. You have right-wing channels, you have the left-wing. They don't change. We also remember how Twitter took off the account of Donald Trump. Do you ever think we could do that in India? Take the account out of Narendra Modi? Never. Let me tell you, my Facebook posts have come down, my Twitter likes have come down, and I know perfectly well why people cannot see it. Before I proceed, I want to tell, I think Priyanka ji, that's your name. She spoke about Afzal Guru. She said they wanted something about us. Who? Kisne फांसी दिलवाया Afzal Guru को? Who hung Afzal Guru? The UPA government. Who hung Ajmal Kasab? The UPA government, the Congress party. How dare you talk about us? Let us see what happened before 2014 and now. The lady again said that Paranjoy can tweet and nothing happens. If all of us tweet against Modi and are put behind bars, then what will happen? But let me tell you what happens to journalists, serious journalists. Siddiq Kappan, UAPA, for reporting Hathras. 5 journalists in Kashmir behind bars, UAPA. Investigation on Paranjoy, what happened to NDTV now, it's been sold. NewsClick, behind bars, UAPA. Why? Because they say they get funding from China. What is PM Cares? Didn't Vivo give money to PM Cares? What is that? Why haven't journalists pointed out that part? Where in PM Cares, this money come from China? Vivo, Xiaomi, all of those. Initially, the Prime Minister was soliciting funds for PM Cares, saying it's a government fund. Recently, they came out and said it's a private fund. Then why did our PSUs give money to it? Why was Mr. Narendra Modi soliciting money? Why do journalists take it up seriously? I also want to include Quint, News Minute, also being investigated. Now let us get to the main points today. Have you heard of Gurmeet Ramrahi? He's a convicted rapist. He has been given parole 64 times. He has been paroled 6 times in 2 days, and each time 40 days out. He lives in Haryana. He's in the Haryana jail. Why has he been given parole? Have you heard of this story? Have you anybody heard of this story? He's a convicted rapist cum murderer. Not reported by the present media. They're threatened. Retail inflation is at 5.9%. Gas prices are above 1,000. Petrol prices are above 100. 10% unemployment. 22 to 24 years old, 44% unemployment. Do you hear any stories on that? You don't. Why don't you? Money pool. The Prime Minister of India has not stepped into Manipur. Let's understand that. 6 months on, more than 200 people dead, still continuing, murder still happening there. Rahul Gandhi, my leader, has gone there, comforted people. The Prime Minister of India spoke on it for 2 minutes. Is the media reporting? No, they are much more interested about the Prime Minister's trip to Lakshadweep. Very snorkeling. Nothing about Manipur. And when my leader wants to do a Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra from Manipur to Mumbai, they don't allow him. They're not giving him permission. We finally got it. And Anand और तूफान राहुल गांधी को नहीं रोक सकते. नरेंद्र मोदी कभी नहीं. Let me tell you that. So that is it. Rahul Gandhi, they addressed the nation and said, I want Shanti. In 2014, everything was taken up. I still remember 2611, accountability. Shivraj Patil resigned. Who is accountable now for Manipur? Who has resigned? Why has the media taken it up? Has the Home Minister resigned? Has the CM of Manipur resigned? They keep pointing fingers at us. We all know what happened in Pathankot. I know you're a BJP audience, so please, why did you point that out when others were talking about it?
Because they were not this stupid.
Please don't interrupt. See, this is heckling. This is called heckling at CBC.
We do not want audience voices, not in this debate. You will be given a chance for your questions.
ISI did it. And Mr. Amit Shah invites the ISI to investigate it. Has ever the Congress party done it? In 10 years, Mr. Manmohan Singh did not visit Pakistan. Whereas the Prime Minister has gone a number of times. How many times has he visited China? So why isn't the media taking it up? Mahua Moitra expelled from Parliament. But the Parliament attack happened by young children, I would call them. And what did the Delhi police say? It is a terrorist attack. The opposition did not say. You put UAPA on them. But what about the member of Parliament, Pratap Simha, who gave them the passes? Why is nothing happening over there? Mahua has been expelled. But here on this side, this particular person is not anyway. It's not even gone behind bars, not even suspended from Parliament. Danish Ali was called terrorist inside Parliament by Ramesh Budri, member of Parliament of the Bharatiya Janata Party. What has happened to his case? Has he been expelled? वो बोलते कार्रवाई करेंगे. Why is there only one side? Has the media been reporting on this? Why is the media scared after 2014? He talks about anti-corruption, and he said it rightly, I think. On one thing I agree, Anand, that NCP was naturally corrupt party. Ajit Pawar is the perpetrator sabse bada scam. Then when he joins, nobody talks about it. Why is the media not questioning? So it is the way the media speaks. It is the way the media is presenting. These things are happening. Before 2014, let's understand very importantly, the government of India was questioned. I remember Nirbhaya. I remember the so-called coal allegation, so-called 3G, everything. What did the Supreme Court say of the 3G? There was no scam. What did the media take out of it? Nirbhaya. But what happened? We have had numerous Nirbhayas. We have had Hathras, we have had Katua, we had Unnao. And we have I need 1 minute more, please. We had our wrestlers protesting. You say, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. If the wrestlers, gold medalists, Olympic medalists, Asian Games medalists cannot get justice, how will a girl child or a girl in a village get justice? The rapists are saying that itna bada rape ye ho gaya hai, unko nyay nahi mil raha hai. So gaon mein we could do whatever we want. What is the sandesh going to these rapists? इतने बड़े wrestlers को, इतने बड़े हमारे जो सितारों को न्याय नहीं मिल रहा है. They don't get justice. We can all do whatever we want.
এই বালের কথা বলতে কি না শুনবো
Why is the media not pointing out these things?
আর মেরে দিল
Last but not the least, the COVID deaths, more than 40 lakhs. What was reported here? 4,000.
আরো তোর কাছে
4,000 was reported. It was more than 40 lakhs. And that time, they all attacked the New York Times. But when required, the attack does not happen. And also let me tell you that Modi government did not compensate the COVID deaths. They later refused to compensate. Has the media questioned it? PM Cares is the biggest fraud. Why is the media not bring electoral bonds? Another big fraud on this country. Why is the media not questioning? During our time, everything. Lakhimpur Kheri, let's not forget what happened there. But at the same time, the Minister of State for Home did not step down. In the UPA time, any time there was an allegation against us, every minister stepped down because we wanted Nishpaksh Janch, an investigation which will not be touched by that particular minister. That is what. Who got you the right to information? That is against corruption. The right to information is being watered down every day. That is also for journalists, let me tell you that, a very important tool. That has been watered down after the Modi government is coming. So do not point fingers during our time because the media was free to report what they want. Media made fun of Manmohan Singh. Here now you can't even make fun of the speaker. In the parliament, raincoat pehen ke naha raha hai. We cannot forget this. So I just want to say, I'm finishing. I just want to say, media before 2014 did not have the ED gun on their head. They did not have any of these threats. After 2014, there is magnificent, I would use the word, threat on them. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Shama. Very passionate and very pointed, of course. You mentioned the Right to Information Act. I think in August this year, we have passed the Right to Digital Data Protection Act. And as a sub-clause of the Right to Digital Data Protection Act, we've literally watered down the Right to Information Act. So what a tremendous trade-off.
আমার চ্যানেলে 18 বছর ভিউয়ার সব এগুলো কাউন্টারগুলো জানে আমার চ্যানেলে সব 18 বছর ভিউয়ার এগুলো কাউন্টারগুলো জানে
But having said that, none other than one of the senior-most brain surgeons of the city, who's been a debating stalwart and a debating partner of myself for decades, Dr. Shundip Chatterjee. Just before you start, Shundip, we've got lots of speakers on CDC channel on YouTube Live. So this debate is going on YouTube Live. We've got to stick on time. Thank you.
Talking about time, I heard this story about two priests whose arguments were really weak and they still had to preach. And one said, my argument is so weak, I never stop when my time is up. I continue. And he said, how long do you continue? The other one asked. And he said, I continue till I find people looking at their watches. The other said, when the argument is weaker, I carry on even more when they look at their watches. And he said, when do you stop? He said, when they take their watches off their wrist, hold it against their ear and shake it to see was it working. And so, Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, we've had two examples of two priests who waited for you to look at your watches and hang it next to your ear, so you can well understand how strong their argument must be. Is the press so oppressed that they need to prostrate themselves to please rather than to present? Suppressed, oppressed, or depressed they may be, but their job is to present. And it is through the medium of presentation that they may seek to please or displease. Presenting is the primary aim of journalism. Pleasure or displeasure is the secondary result. And that is the sum and substance of our argument from this side. If you want to look at the beauty of a flower, you have to see the color of its petals. If you have to appreciate the ferocity of a tiger, you have to see its snarls and its nails and its fangs. If you have to understand the nature of a politician in Calcutta, you have to check whether he's red or saffron or blue. Only after you see the presentation can you decide whether you will be pleased or displeased with the creature in front of you. And hence, presentation is the first thing that a journalist has to do. Pleasure, pleasing, displeasing occurs thereafter. But in fact, there is more to that. And that was a point that Anand Ranganathan's speech reminded me of. He said, in Calcutta, how do you please your political bosses in Bengal and Delhi at the same time? The answer is you can't. Because this state, we've always had, as I've said before, two elephants, one elephant from a tribe in the center, another elephant from a tribe in the strait, fighting it out on the grasslands of Bengal. And when two elephants fight, it is always the grass that suffers. Imagine the poor journalist standing in the middle of the trampled grass, having to decide which leg of which elephant is responsible for trampling more grass. That presentation is likely to endanger his life, his liberty, his job. Which brings me to another point. Pleasing and presenting paradoxically may be a point of view. Let's start with an example. But before I do so, the answer is found in the word presenting itself. Long before Austin and Gaskin described PowerPoint presentation, medieval Latin used the word presentation in the word presentiere. And presentiere in Latin means to showcase. The word showcase means you show some part and you case some part. Therefore, every presentation has a personal bias. And when we talk about presentations, every presentation by every journalist is clothed in personal bias. Do not think like the members of the other side have been trying to tell you that there is objectivity in journalistic presentation. To my mind, the last time an objective presentation was made in this country was when Sanjay described the war to Dhritarashtra. There has never been objective presentation by anybody after that. James Augustus Hickey was the second person to try it in the soils of Bengal in 1780 when he started the Bengal Gazette, the first newspaper in this country. And he said all reporting will be objective, no subjective reporting. They started reporting the truth against the British. In 2 years' time, the office was burned down close and the paper packed off. That's the trade-off and the conflict between principles and practice of journalism. And I will remind you of that. But coming back to the paradox of presenting and pleasing being two sides of the same coin, let's look at an example. Here in Bengal, a Trinamool leader of the Panchayat is found dead outside his home, lying in a pool of blood. What would a narrative be? The narrative would be a Panchayat leader of the Trinamool was found dead outside his home, lying in a pool of blood. The cause is being investigated. It always makes me intrigued that the police take a few months to find out who the murderer is. Our courts of law take a few years to put the right people in jail, as we've seen. But the media diagnoses the cause of death and the murderers within seconds of appearing on the scene.
And I do not see sometimes the need of having either press or courts when we have the media to do the job. So here's the media. This is a media that owes allegiance to the local government here. They arrive and say, this Trinamool Panchayat leader has been brutally murdered by the opposition members from the BJP, possibly with help even from the Congress and the left front. And they have all brutally murdered this man outside his home. Then comes the media with its allegiance to the center. And they say, this man was found dead outside his home. It is accused that the BJP did it, but the truth is, this is an internal faction feud of the Trinamool that has caused his death. So when the first media is looked upon by his bosses in the state, that media person is said, look, he's presenting facts. But when the second media comes and says, the bosses in the state say, he's pleasing, he's not presenting. So that is our second point, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasing and presenting are paradoxically two different points of view, depending on whom you owe allegiance to. In fact, I have to at this time point out the Right Honorable Mr. Saket, who talked about the role of the media and offered kudos to the Telegraph, thus proving the very point that journalism in the Telegraph and other newspapers actually present, they do not please. Thank you for making the point from our side. Even most powerful was the speaker who followed, Shama Muhammad. I sat open-mouthed throughout her whole speech, trying to work out what Afzal Guru, Azmal Qasam, atrocities against journalists, Manipur, Rahul Gandhi's travel across the country had to do with the topic. Till, ladies and gentlemen, I realized why I was open-mouthed. We all stay open-mouthed longer than we want when we are in the company of dentists. In fact, Mr. Chairman, sir, so used to having become to the idea of having news that is not objective, that we have coined a term called fake news. How can a news be fake? It's an oxymoron. It's like talking about a satanic god or a poison delicacy. A sinful member of the Calcutta Club. You can look for one, you never spot one. So ladies and gentlemen, to sum up, keep to time and not have you look at your watches or shake them like they did. Our point is two very clear. First, the press has to present. That is the primary job. The presentation can please some and displease some. They do not please or displease first. They present first. Secondly, whether you think they're presenting or pleasing depends on whether you are wearing clothes that are red, blue or saffron underneath. And therefore there is no absolute term like presenting or like pleasing. And there I rest our case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, as good as ever. And it was so pertinent that Shundip revoked James Augustus Hickey, who published the first newspaper from Calcutta. And Shundip, we as surgeons must never forget that James Augustus Hickey was a failed surgeon in Ireland, and only when he failed in surgery did he take to journalism, come to Chakpal Khan and jump ship. And that is how the first newspaper publication starts in Bengal. Strangers are the allies of history. And after Shundip, it is a person which is always admired. And I just start with a little anecdote that the former political dispensation our next speaker belongs to at one part of time. Recently in Delhi, bought some rubbish composter or something that actually costs 50 lakhs. And that rubbish composing process was advertised all across the Delhi media for 25 crores. And on that note, I cannot but congratulate Mr. Ashutosh that he is not with that dispensation anymore. The floor is yours, Ashutosh. Thanks.
मेरा दुर्भाग्य ये है कि 4.5 साल में राजनीति में रहा, उसके बाद 5 साल में जर्नलिज्म में रहा, उसके पहले 23 साल मैंने जर्नलिज्म किया, लेकिन ये पॉलिटिक्स मेरा पीछा नहीं छोड़ती। जहां भी जाओ पीछे पड़ी रहती है और मेरा परिचय ऐसे ही दिया जाता है जैसे कि मैं अभी भी पॉलिटिक्स में हूं। खैर, मैं जब पूरी डिबेट आज सुन रहा था तो मुझे ये लगा ही नहीं कि किसी ने अगेंस्ट द मोशन बोला है, तो फिर ये डिबेट आज कैसे हुई? I just fail to understand. There is no debate. The issue is already done. The journalism in this country has degenerated to a level that nobody has guts to defend kind of journalism which is happening in the country. And I'm glad that those who are supposed to speak against the motion, they are also speaking for the motion. And it's good for the democracy. It's brilliant for the democracy that those who are killing democracy in the country, that those who are not letting the debate happen in the country, they also are so ashamed that they will not speak against the motion. I'm sorry to use a harsh word. I apologize for that. But that is the reality. Today the reality is, and across the world, that the fascism evolves, becomes a force only through democracy. There's no other way. It's fashionable to go back to Jawaharlal Nehru. Rubbish. But those who say so, वो भूल जाते हैं कि अगर इस देश के अंदर डेमोक्रेसी नहीं होती, अगर इस देश के अंदर नेहरू नहीं होते, तो आज जो लोग सत्ता में बैठे हुए हैं वो कभी नहीं बैठ पाते। आज जो सत्ता में बैठे हुए हैं वो कभी नहीं बैठ पाते। आपको बोलने का मौका मिला, आपने जो कुछ कहना था आपको कहने का मौका मिला, आपको अपनी पब्लिकेशंस करने का मौका मिला, आपको किताबें लिखने का मौका मिला। और यही नहीं, जो लोग इमरजेंसी की बुराई करते हैं वो शायद भूल जाते हैं कि उनके सबसे बड़े नेता, उनके सबसे बड़े आका वो चिट्ठियां लिख रहे थे कि मुझे माफ कर दीजिए, हमसे गलती हो गई, हम आपसे मिलना चाहते हैं, 2 मिनट का वक्त दे दीजिए। That's the tragedy. That's the tragedy. And if people want to know who was writing the letter, I can always tell him, I can always tell her. But today we are not talking about the politics. But today, this debate is even divided between the Congress kind of journalism and the BJP kind of journalism. It's not about journalism. It's about pre-2014 journalism and it's about post-2014 journalism. The fact of the matter, state by nature is repressive. The state by nature doesn't like free press. That's a law. And if the press has to survive, if the press has to stand up, then the press has every right to stand up, look into the eyes of the Prime Minister and say, Mr. Prime Minister, you are wrong. But today if you do that, आप उनके पीछे क्यों पड़े हुए हैं? या आप उनके पीछे क्यों पड़े हुए? What kind of question is this? आप उनके पीछे क्यों पड़े हुए हैं? आप उनसे क्यों पूछते हैं? आप उनसे नफरत क्यों करते हैं? अरे बाबा, सवाल पूछना गुनाह है क्या? जब आप मनमोहन सिंह से सवाल करो तो आप कोई एजेंडा नहीं चलाते हो। जब आप अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी सवाल पूछे तो आप कोई एजेंडा नहीं चलाते हो। जब आप नेहरू से सवाल पूछो आप कोई एजेंडा नहीं चलाते हो। लेकिन अगर आज सवाल पूछो तो आपका एजेंडा है क्या? आप इतना नफरत क्यों करते हैं? Are you hater? इतनी नफरत नहीं करनी चाहिए। The fact of the matter is, it's the job of a prime minister, it's the job of a press journalists like me to ask questions. We are not asking questions to an individual. We are asking questions to a prime minister. I just said one small example. Long after Jawaharlal Nehru was alive, our Hindustan Times editor has written a column that Mr. Nehru wanted to promote his daughter as the next leader. When Nehru read it, he was very upset. उन्होंने अपने PRO से पूछा भाई ये क्या लिखा जाए, किसने लिखा, जरा बात कराइए। उनसे बात हुई। The gentleman was invited, had a cup of tea with Jawaharlal Nehru. And Jawaharlal Nehru asked him, why did you write it? Why didn't you consult me? You should have taken my version. That gentleman said, we could not because your office didn't allow me to meet you. From that day onwards, Nehru appointed Maulana Azad and said, every Sunday you will meet this gentleman. Whatever queries he had, you have to answer that. And that continued till the week Maulana Azad died. It's good that we discuss democracy and emergency together. And anybody who is in census should realize that emergency was a dark chapter in Indian history. But that was done constitutionally. Today, do I need to elaborate more on that? But the fact is, एक निर्भया कांड हुआ था। मुझे लगता महीनों उस पर डिबेट हुई। इतनी डिबेट हुई है कि उसके बाद देश का कानून बदला। मैं कंपेयर नहीं करना चाहता हूं, लेकिन आज बिल्किस बानो के मामले पे पत्रकार, बड़े बड़े जर्नलिस्ट, एडिटर्स, एंकर्स तो बिल्किस बानो का धर्म देखते हैं। Is it not shameful? क्या आप क्रिमिनल्स का रिलीजन देखते हैं, धर्म देखते हैं, वो हिंदू है, मुसलमान है, सिख है, ईसाई है, और फिर आप उस पर डिबेट करते हैं? Tell me, how many of you watched debate on the day when the Supreme Court has given its verdict on a TV channel? I was watching the channel. Within half an hour, all the TV channels, they shut that subject and never discussed. As a country, we should be ashamed of on whose prompting this was done. So today it's not an issue that who is the Prime Minister. Today it is not an issue before me, who is the journalist. Today before me, the issue is what kind of ideology we have. Is it a degenerate ideology? It is a product of inferiority complex that every day to talk about a particular religion, you have to get a reference of some other religion. That's wrong in that religion. I'm talking about my religion. Talk to me about Shankaracharya. Talk to me about Ramanujacharya. Talk to me about Vallabhacharya. Talk to me about Ved. Talk to me about Dagman. Talk to me about Redas. Talk to me about Kabir. Talk to me about Tulsi. Talk to me about Radhakrishnan. Talk to me about Bharat. I want to know what's wrong with us. If there's wrong with that other religion, it's their problem. They have to address. They have to deal with that. Are we going to replicate that religion? Are we trying to make that religion our religion? But they are so-called ideologues. And I say with great concern that any ideology
Any ideologue who suffers from deep can never do justice. Neither in journalism nor in politics. This will take the country to a deep division and finally the entire population has suffered. Again, I reiterate, the fascism comes to the country only through democratic means. Thank you.
Thank you. Perception into. I didn't take it, I'm taking it. Yeah. I know, please. That Hitler won 3 elections from 1933 till 1939 when he takes control of the Third Reich. Right?
এটা কি রোহিণী ভার্মা?
Yeah, yeah.
প্রাণপ্রত মহিলা।
Right. Having said that, a man who did
এই নয়,
almost
সামনে
the
যেটা।
unthinkable
একদম
in
প্রাণপ্রত।
recent times, left a large national channel and walked across the other shores and started a digital platform of his own, a very popular, a very conscientious and a very thoughtful face to all of us from St. Kate. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. You see, generally it is expected that when you say that here is a journalist who left a television channel and started a digital venture, it is quite obvious and normal to assume that he wasn't having his say in TV because TV has become like this, TV has become like that. But may I please tell everyone, I am not looking for anyone's pity. I have not done this or taken this decision out of, a problem. It is something whose time had come. In fact, I think the time had come yesterday. I should have taken this decision long ago. Anyway, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Let me first start by using a word that Dr. Chatterjee used. Towards the end of your speech, you said there is nothing absolute. All of what I will say right now is to do with that word. See, a debate like this is very, very good because as an anchor, as a TV news presenter who used to anchor the oldest running debate show on Indian news television, I'm sure you all must have watched it, called The Big Fight. This is on the English channel and the Hindi channel of the same group. I also was the host to the oldest running debate show on Indian news television in Hindi. That show was Mukabla. So I know debates are very, very important. In fact, in one of the lines, we also used to say that debates are essential, not just for discussion, but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens your mind up for different views, opinion of different hues. And in that context, I feel that this debate has not think that journalism only, and because I quit a big channel which has very recently been taken over by a new, that we must indulge in any form of absolutism. I don't think we should expect that journalists must be absolute in their opinion. Let me break this up in 2 parts. Number 1, as a journalist, I am supposed to only consider one thing absolute, that is the fact of a story. As a journalist, I am also supposed to have an opinion. As a person who used to host these 2 very important shows, I had an opinion. I am not going to sit there as a doorknob. You tell me what your opinion is, you tell me what it is. In fact, Dr. Sarkar right here in the middle, did you notice what he was doing? After each and every speaker, he gave his own 2 bits. Well, that's a thinking man. That is, congratulations, a very good journalist. Thank you. So as a journalist, I am supposed to have an opinion. There is only one condition in which I will have no opinion, or I will be truly neutral. This is a wrong assumption to expect that journalists must be neutral. You know that one condition when an individual, forget journalists, one condition where an individual will become truly neutral. Anyone? Thank you. The day you are dead, that is when you become truly neutral. Till that day, you will have opinions let those opinions be based on absolute facts. The problem is that the opinion has become absolute. The fact is, you retrofit that fact. And this is equally applicable across the board. Which is why, what I will do is, since I have the advantage of having heard each and every person, and I found this very interesting, and this is not a commentary on their arguments, but today when I saw Saket for the first time, I found him really bulky, and Dr. Ranganathan is lean and thin. This is not a commentary on the arguments that they place. So Paranjoy Da said, journalism is to speak truth to power. Paranjoy, I say, that is not my job as a journalist. My job is to speak the truth, whether to power or to anyone. If you, for instance, are not saying something right, it will be my duty as a journalist to correct you, question everyone, question everything. We had Mayuri also who used the word provocation. Now the thing is, it is very important for me to provoke, and not the sort of provocation that will lead to riots on streets or spread hate. When you ask a provocative question, it evokes a response. You get a response. So in that context, it is important for a journalist to provoke. So if a journalist is doing that, I don't think he is pleasing. This is a form of presentation. We had Dr. Ranganathan who spoke about various social media platforms and digital options being available. That's where you can find our new enterprise also. So I would only say that, you see, as a working journalist, and I'm sure there will be a lot of people here who are observing journalists from the outside, and then some youngsters who would like to take up journalism. Please don't get into this debate so very early on. Try to look at a situation where there are different points of view on this. The only thing that you must question is the fact of the argument. The fact has to be absolute. So if in that context an opinion is being made, it is good. Saket Gokhale spoke about anchors becoming party to a conversation. Why should they not become a party to a conversation, Saket? Okay. Even if that is the case, if Saket says that you should not become a party, here is what my opinion is. Certain facts of a story will force me to opine twice in favor of Saket Gokhale or 2 times in favor of Priyanka Tibrewal's party, 3 times in favor of what I feel is accurate and nobody is raising that point. This is where the whole point of absolutism comes in. To think that a person must be absolute, that he should not have an opinion at all. This is a very absolute thought. That is okay. My point is, suppose if I don't agree with you, and you and I have had great disagreements in the past also, and that too on Twitter. But that's okay. I'm not supposed to agree with you. Similarly, I'm not supposed to agree with you. Why is there this moral compulsion that I should agree with someone or disagree with someone, and that too with absolutism? No, I will not. That is not my job. In that context, it is not my job to please. And I don't think a lot of these people are doing it. And even if they are doing it, that it is their right to believe in what they believe. To say media should be independent or independence of the media, I don't understand these things. If I can back up my thought with a very, very logical reasoning and facts, I think I should be entitled to believe whatever I believe. That's the point that I want to make. There was a lot of telegraph bashing that happened here. I have only 15-16 seconds. You see, absolutism is that telegraph is very bad, right? Telegraph is pillion riding on criticizing the government here on the back of Dr. Ranganathan or Sai Deepak. See, this is a very popular thing to say. You know what will be the right thing to say, which is not very popular? A telegraph which is accused of being pro-state government is the same organization which owns a television channel which does the exact, or is accused of doing the exact opposite. How convenient. Now this is a very unpopular thing to say. Nobody wants to hear this. But as a journalist, I feel it is my duty, and which is our motto right here on the red mic. It's a new venture that we have started. All we want to say is that as journalists, I have to say what is right and not what is popular. Because what is right will always remain right. But if you start chasing popularity, unfortunately what will happen is that you will lose sight of what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Saket. Ladies and gentlemen, all this... Sanket, Sanket, I stand corrected. Actually, by our standards, I think it's going to snow tonight in Kolkata, right? So, we better get the heaters on tonight. Now, very quickly, we are in a race against time. Can we have the student interjectors? We are running against the YouTube slot, so we take one question per side. So who has a question for the proposition?
Okay. For the proposition, may I request Fiona Raj, who's framed a very short questions, Fiona.
So my question is for Mr. Ashutosh. So you mentioned in your speech about how the media has degenerated.
We have heard it.
Right.
We've heard it.
Media has degenerated over time, but as a person who himself runs an independent media house called Satyam Hindi, don't you think it's the opposite of degeneracy and rather progression of media when we live in a world where media does not have to depend on TV, which is an independent source?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. That was my question.
What should I answer to this? The journalism per se I'm talking about. I'm not talking about only the TV journalism, the print media, or the YouTube journalism. Journalism per se has gone down. Even the YouTube journalism, there are podcasters, there are day in and day out. They find fault with the one kind of a
Thank you, sir. It was very evident from Mayuri ma'am's speech that she vouches for presenting in a pleasing way. But ma'am, you very skillfully demonstrated through your argument that presenting and pleasing are not necessarily opposing entities, but there is a fine line between presenting in a pleasing way and presenting just to please. And that fine line is being crossed quite frequently in journalism today. So,
we get the point. We get the point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayuri, please respond quickly.
Debating etiquette necessarily entails that you broaden the scope of the motion as much as possible. So in order to assure that we are not restricted to a certain viewpoint of what presentation or pleasing may mean, the goal really was to hopefully make the audience see that there is nuance and context to these words that frame a motion.
Thank you, Mayuri. Thank you.
Well, there's one other question.
No, we can't. We can't. We can't right now because I'm sorry. My apologies. Can I ask the opposition, Dr. Shundeep Chatterjee, to give a 2-minute synopsis before the House votes after hearing the proposition?
Do you know why there are so many people on the other side who are journalists and now have become politicians? Because as journalists, they were used to presenting. Then they decided to please. That's why they changed their profession. The other singular observation that I have for the right honorable members of the proposition is that they seem to have all come here to disseminate their own political agenda, and they were struggling to fit in the motion of the debate within that agenda somehow, and it occupied the least amount of space and time. You know, Mr. Ashutosh asked the question, what is wrong with us? And the answer is everything, because you don't understand what the motion is. What we are trying to say is, we are not trying to say journalists are heavenly creatures who objectively report everything. We are saying that journalists have to present first. Pleasing or displeasing depends on who the observer is. Is he from Calcutta? Is he from Delhi? Is she from Calcutta and he from Delhi? Where is the observer that is looking at your presentation? That decides whether you're pleasing or displeasing. So the presentation comes first. Saying that the job of a journalist is to please is like saying the job of a traffic policeman in Calcutta is to prostrate himself before every member of the ruling party that crosses the road. No! The job of the traffic policeman is to direct the traffic. But when he sees people with blue lights, or he sees people with blue and white colors, he has to allow them to break the rules and look the other side. That is the difference between presentation and pleasing. For a journalist, his job is important. Remember, there is no job security. This insecurity he suffers from makes him present with a bias, because he has to remember he has to keep his job. And remember, it is impossible to make a man understand something really simple if his monthly salary depends on not understanding it. So in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, sir, our point is to, number one, presentation precedes pleasing or displeasing, and presentation and pleasing are very fluid terms. You cannot treat them absolutely. You had 7 people raise your hands, sir. Remember, there are 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 seas, 7 continents, 7 wonders of the world, and the next wonder will be that these 7 will be 70 in the next few seconds. Thank you.
Sandeep, thank you. You know, if Oscar Wilde happened to be present amongst us this evening, Oscar Wilde would have said, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So Oscar Wilde isn't. The winter is chilly enough. Paranjoy, you've been really demanding your 2 minutes is there for you.
I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm not going to take 2 minutes because you were extremely indulgent. No.
Make a start.
Sorry, I'll make a start. Firstly, let's understand 2 things. This debate was less about journalism and more about politics. To hold my colleague responsible for bringing politics is absolutely ridiculous. Politics is life, okay? Journalism is life. The problem with my opponents is whether it be Dr. Shundeep Chatterjee or Sanket, I didn't know which side they were on. Seriously, I couldn't make out whether they're speaking on our side or their side. Be that as it may, I will make a few observations and correct a few facts. Let's start with J. Sai Deepak. He dwelt a lot on the emergency. He didn't talk about the fact that the emergency lasted 21 months. For almost 10 years, we've had an undeclared emergency. And that's still going on. I must correct some of his facts. He said Sonia Gandhi, without mentioning her name, never gave an interview to a mainstream journalist. He's wrong. She gave an interview to Shekhar Gupta. And if Shekhar Gupta is not a mainstream journalist, then J. Sai Deepak, you're not an advocate. There were several references made to the ownership. Why don't you name names? 2 of the biggest owners of the media today are not political parties but Ambani and Adani. I should say something to you, madam. Miss Priyanka Tibrawan. She's a woman, right? She represents half of this state, half of humanity. Did she even comment once? Mauma Mitra, the kind of questions that a member of her party asked in the ethics committee? Did she ask? Does a member of parliament, a male member of parliament belonging to her party ask her, or have the right to ask her who she speaks to at night and where she stays? Did she talk about her member of parliament, Ramesh Viduri, who used obscenities, describing people in the most obscene words, right? Called him circumcised, called him a... I'm mentioning these words because she kept quiet. Let me just tell you something. People were asking, why aren't we asking questions to Mr. Modi? The reason is he does not give us an opportunity to ask questions. As I told you right at the beginning, he's the only Prime Minister of India who's never faced a press conference. Dr. Manmohan Singh, 10 years ago, answered dozens of questions. People ask me, talking about the farmers' protests, why did we have those 3 laws?
Sign language.
There are hundreds of farmers who died. This was the peak of COVID. Never before in the history of this country have we seen this kind of protest. She talked about Riya Chakravarti as a woman. I'm sorry to say, madam, you disappoint half of humanity who are females.
Do wind up.
I'm going to wind up with a few points, and they are personal in nature. She talked about Hindenburg research. People said, no, because I can say what I want to in Twitter, I haven't been harassed. I'm the only citizen of India against whom Mr. Gautam Adani's lawyers have instituted 6 cases of defamation. And I'm the only journalist named in the Hindenburg research report, madam. And I must say something before I conclude. I've had to pay a stiff price for taking my positions. And in conclusion, I want to thank 2 gentlemen who I think they're unique in the world. There are only 2 medical doctors on the planet who are debaters actively. Dr. Kumar Shakar and Dr. Sundar Chatterjee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paranjoy. Thank you.
Well, I think I need to speak only 20 seconds. I spoke about Moham Mitra, I spoke about Riya Chakravarti, sir. What I understand that the motion was whether media spoke about everything, what is the reality, whether they showed everything or not. Yes, they did. That is what I said. It wasn't about ethics. And if you want to discuss ethics, let's step into another debate.
Huh?
Okay, so I think the debate season is just starting. I just need to respond. Please.
Deepak response.
Please. Yeah, come on. You have. Quiet. This is Calcutta and we know how to behave. Don't we? Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, you heard them all. There's very seldom been as pointed, as passionate, opinions were mixed, and debating, after all, is a glorious exercise in intellectual dishonesty. Many people would have spoken things they seldom did believe in, and vice versa. We've had a sample, and then at the beginning of the debate, we now seek your opinion at the end of the debate. You've been a wonderful audience. We are grateful you to making this sort of, pre-snowfall Kolkata, and now you show us what you felt. Have you changed your mind or not? So those of you who feel that you concur with the opposition, please put your hands up. Pradeep? Thank you. And those of you who have still stuck to your guns and felt that you still are swimming the tide with the proposition, do put your hands up. I think the opposition did a fantastic job to a sway of the opinion at the day, but at the end of the day, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been a wonderful audience. The motion is carried. Thank you.